Hello everyone, this is James Shore with another how-to video. I'm recording this on June 8th, 2015. When we left off in the last episode, we had just gotten our automated build working, and it's working nicely. We type in one command and we get an unambiguous success or failure message. And that is exactly what you want out of your automated build. And we also installed the tool called Jake to handle some of the more common aspects of automated builds that we're going to need, like command line processing and dependency management. Now, in the last episode, I set you a challenge. I said that the way we installed Jake was incorrect, that there was a flaw in it, and I challenged you to figure out what that flaw is. Here's the answer. Remember, what we're trying to do here is create a reproducible build. We're trying to create something so that everybody sees the same result on different computers given the same code. So I, on this computer, can type Jake. And if I go over to another person's machine, like this Windows box I've got here, and I've transferred all the code over, if I type Jake, we should get the exact same result, right? We should get it to say build OK. It's the same code. Will it work? No, it doesn't. And that's because Jake is a dependency. It is part of our code. It's something that we need to make our code run that we didn't write ourselves. That's called a dependency because we depend on it to work. And the way we created Jake, or the way we installed Jake, was we used the -G option for global, which means that unless everybody else types npm install Jake-G, it won't work. Now I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And now if I type Jake, everything works. So you think that's good, right? But this kind of thing, this npm install Jake-G, that is something that people now have to remember to do. And remember, the purpose of our automated build is to prevent you from having a list of steps that you have to follow in order to successfully build. So what we want is we want to manage this dependency so that it works properly. There's also the broader question of as Jake upgrades, doing npm install Jake will bring in newer versions, and those newer versions may not be compatible with the Jake file we have. We need this code to work exactly as it does now for forever. No matter when we come back to this code, we need it to work just like it is now. That's dependency management. Now, there are two core schools on how to approach dependency management, two schools of thought. The first school of thought is define all the versions of all the dependencies you have, and then automatically fetch them from the internet when you build the first time. That's school of thought number one, strategy number one. Strategy number two, school of thought number two, is all the code that you use, all the dependencies you have, check them into your version control system so that you don't have to worry about the internet having what you need, so that it's all right there for you. Now, there's trade-offs between each of these two schools. I tend to favor school of thought number two. I tend to prefer to check everything into my version control system. The advantage of checking everything in is that you don't have to worry about versions changing. Sometimes you'll say, give me this version, and people will have changed it out from under you. That can happen with some versioning, some dependency management systems. Or the internet may be down for you right now. Maybe you're on an airplane, or maybe things have just gone funky somewhere. That happens all the time. Or maybe whoever created that version of the software has depublished it. 10 years from now, nothing that we are using today is going to be current, and some of it might just be gone. So the advantage of checking things into your repository is that you guarantee that you always get the code that you need. The downside is that it does make your version control history bigger. You end up taking much more space. And for some version control systems, they have, frankly, design flaws that make them not able to handle large amounts of data. Git is in that category. Once it gets over 2 to 10 gigabytes of data, it starts to have speed and performance problems. But personally, I don't think working around the shortcomings of version control systems is the right answer. If we were to run into that, I would want to come up with a different workaround. Maybe split the repository or use a better tool. One of the two. So those are the trade-offs. The second approach is more reliable, but it does require you to manage your version control system size a little more aggressively. So I'm going to show you how to do approach number two, that is install everything into your repository. To do that, first I'm going to uninstall Jake from the global repository. So the way we do that, uninstall Jake, -G, that says take it out of the global repository. I'll do the same thing here in our Windows box. So now it's gone. Now if we type Jake, we've seen the same answer on both machines, which is, Jake what? Okay, now we need to install Jake locally. That means install it into our local source tree rather than into the global repository, the global npm repository. And before we can do that, though, we need to set up npm in our local directory. Now, this isn't technically necessary, but it's provides a lot of benefits, so we're going to do it. The way we do that is by typing npm init, which says set up npm in this tree, just like git init set up git for us. This will create a package.json file for us. And for a lot of these things, we're just going to take the defaults because we're creating a private application here. This is something we're not going to share out to the rest of the world. And a lot of what npm, the package.json is about sharing with the rest of the world. So we'll take most of the defaults. The name is how to tabs. That works for me. The version, yeah, 1.0, whatever. The description, I don't care. The entry point, that actually doesn't matter for us. Test command doesn't matter for us. Git repository, we're not going to share it, so it doesn't matter. Keywords doesn't matter. Author doesn't matter. License, it's again just for us. So there is our package.json that is created for us. I'm going to go into here, and now I know this just because I've read the documentation on the package.json file, but none of this really matters to us except for one thing it didn't create for us, which is private true. This tells npm that if we try to publish it, that it should give us an error. So we'll save that. Oh, and by the way, if you want the documentation on this, if you Google npm package.json, you'll find it. Or here's the URL right here, docs.npmjs.com/files/package.json. And that will give you all the gory details about everything you can put into this package.json. Now, the reason we need this is because this is where npm keeps track of which dependencies we have installed locally. They get put into a new directory called node modules, and this file will be used to track the versions of everything we have in there. Now, the node modules will also have that, and so the main reason we're doing this, because we are going to check node modules into our version control, main reason we're doing this is to prevent npm from complaining at us about not having it, because it will work fine without it. All right. So there's our package.json. Now, and let's go ahead and check that in. So we've initialized our npm package.json. Now we can install Jake locally. And the way we do that is by saying npm install Jake, just like we did before, but we don't put in the -G. We just say do it locally. And we need to tell it to ignore scripts, because some npm packages, not all and not even most, but some will build a binary file for you after you install it. We don't want to check in any build artifacts into our repository. We just want to check in the source code. So saying ignore scripts will tell it to not build. It will just download the files, put them in the node modules directory. And I made a mistake there. I forgot to add save dev. That will tell it to add this version of Jake to our package.json. So let me do that again. It is idempotent, which means you can do it multiple times and get the same results. And if we do that, you'll see that now Jake has been added to our package.json. And I said save dev because this is a dependency that we only use in development. We only use it for building. Now, if we do a git status, we'll see that we have a new node modules directory and we have changes to our package.json. I'm going to say that we have installed Jake. Now that we've installed it, remember we said ignore scripts. So what we need to do is say npm rebuild. That says go through and run the install scripts for all the installed files. And again, that's idempotent too, so you can do this multiple times and it will work just fine. Once we do the rebuild, we can do a git status again to see if the rebuild added any files. If it did, those are the build artifacts. That's what we would want to ignore, and we would add those to our .gitignore. But in this case, as with most npm packages, there's nothing to ignore, so we are good to go. So now we have Jake installed. It doesn't work. It still doesn't work because it's installed locally. It's not set up as a global command that we can run. Instead, what we need to do is say node modules .bin / Jake. And when we do that, that runs Jake for us. So there is our automated build with a local dependency. What that means is now that if I go over to another machine, like our Windows box over here, remember we don't have Jake working here, we don't have it installed anywhere, but if I get the latest code, and how exactly you transfer code between machines is out of the scope of this series, but your team, when you start working in a professional environment, your team will have processes for you to follow. Usually it will involve typing git pull. That will get the latest code. And now you can see that we have this node modules, and I can type node modules, and on Windows it's /bin /Jake. And that should have worked, so why didn't it? Oh, I forgot to do npm rebuild. Now let's try it. So we're getting close. We are getting very close to our reproducible build, but you saw there's still a separate step we have to type. When something new comes down, you have to type npm rebuild before you run Jake. And also you've got this long command line to run, which is not very nice. So we need to get some very lightweight scripting around our Jake file so that, again, we have just one command. That's what we're going to cover in the next episode. For this episode, I have a couple of exercises for you. I'd like you to go ahead and install Jake uninstall it from your global repository, install it as a local dependency, and check it into Git and get it set up so that you can run it by typing node modules /bin /Jake. All right, that is it for this time. Next time, we're going to do a little bit of shell scripting so that we can take care of the need to type npm rebuild on our new code, and so that we can have just a single command that runs our build for us. We're getting close to being done with this automated build. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.